Greetings, folks. John here from Movie Reviews To Go, and this is my quick review of the new Twilight film, Breaking Dawn Part 1. Now, I'm one of these guys who I've never understood the massive, passionate, obsessive following that Twilight has. But at the same time, I'm the same guy who I've never really understood the massive, passionate anger, hate-on angst that non-Twihards have towards the Twilight films. To me, the films have been what they are. A couple of them not so good, a couple of them okay, and that's what they are. So I go into Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 with a pretty open mind, and I gotta say, I think it might be the best film of the franchise so far, although granted that may not be saying much. Look, on the good side of the film, I love the opening act of this movie. It really revolves all around the wedding between Edward and Bella, and to me it was very charming, it was very endearing. You had a lot of the very human awkward toasts at the wedding, some family tension, some awkwardness, but some charm and some sweetness. And it was done so well, I think it's my favorite scene of the entire franchise so far. It was done so well that I forgot for a minute that we were watching a movie about vampires and werewolves, and that's actually accomplishing quite a bit. One of the other things that I really like about this particular Twilight film is that for the first time in the franchise, we actually see some character development. Look, Edward has been the same mopey, saying the same things Edward from film 1 right up to the last film. Bella has been the exact same unbelievably codependent, obsessive girl that we've seen from the first one to the last one. Everybody's been the exact same. This film, we actually see some character advancement. We see Edward smiling and laughing. We see Edward not being so psychotic, or Bella not being so psychotic. We see some more depth out of each of the Cullen family members. Overall, even Jacob grows. He's becoming a bit of a man, and we see some actual character development. I think that's a big plus. One of the other things I really like, I've always liked the tension between the werewolves and the vampires. I think it's a really neat little mythology they've set up. I haven't always felt they've executed this little mythology well, but in Twilight Breaking Dawn, I really like that tension between the two different clans, if you will. Also, and this was a big thing, many of you know that Bella, if you've seen the trailer, gets pregnant in this film, and it's a half vampire, and it's actually kind of eating her from the inside out, making her quite ill. And as the movie progresses, we see her get thinner and thinner and sicker and more frail looking, to the point that it becomes very disturbing. And as Jackson Rathbone said to me once, it almost becomes a horror film in that way because she really does look that disturbing. The visual effects on her progression are astonishing and disturbing all at the same time. On the bad side of Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1, we see some of the same pestering weaknesses that we've had in all the films. First and foremost is the horrible dialogue. A good example of this is, and this isn't the worst one, but it's just a good example. We see Jacob with one of the girls in his new pack constantly having the same discussion about imprinting. At least you haven't imprinted. Imprinting is horrible. And they just keep hitting the audience over the head to the point that yes, I get it, some big scene involving imprinting must be coming up. And they just keep hitting it over and over again. And it's said so cheesy and it's said so badly. It's painful to listen to. One of the huge weaknesses in Breaking Dawn Part 1 that we don't have in the other films is that the other films have always had a very pronounced definitive antagonist, whether it's James or the redhead or the Volturi. There's always been a pronounced villain. And I think you need that, especially in the sci-fi type of, even if it's a paranormal teen romance movie, it's still a sci-fi film. You need to have a pronounced threatening antagonist, and there is no antagonist. I mean, basically, you get 5 minutes into the credits or 2 minutes into the credits. Stick around for the credits, by the way, if you're a Twilight fan, because you actually have an extra scene with the Volturi. But that's the first time a bad guy shows up in the film. There are no bad guys, and without that antagonist to kind of be the engine to drive the story, you're just kind of left with characters talking to each other, and from time to time throughout the film, that's the sense that you get. Another lingering weakness of all the Twilight films, that is unfortunately in this one as well, is the lack of any feel of flow and smoothness to the story. All the Twilight films up to this point have felt like you have a collection of scenes that are just very kind of harshly edited together. Bang, 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 bang. And it often feels jarring to me. And to me, the same thing happens in Breaking Dawn Part 1. You have a story there, but it's told in such a way that feels very jarring and just disjointed. The scenes don't smoothly flow together. There isn't a coherent one basic narrative that just flows nicely from beginning to end. It's very jarring and upsetting as a film watcher, actually. Overall, Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 is probably the best of the franchise to me. You have a very endearing first act with the wedding. You actually have some character development in this one, some nice tension between the werewolves and the vampires, and incredible visual effects with Bella, but unfortunately, some of those nagging problems endure. Terrible, terrible dialogue, a lack of even flowing narrative, and no real antagonist in the film that kind of hurt it. Overall, I'm going to give Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 1 a 5.5 out of 10. For movie reviews to go, I'm John Campea.